name is Charles Sprung. Most of my friends and family call me Charlie. I was born September 4th, 1949. I'm the son of Miriam and Milton Sprung. My mother Miriam was the daughter of Sophie and Louis Rubin, and my father Milton was the son of Charles and Sophie Sprung. I had a younger brother Barry, who was 3 years younger than me, and a sister Helene, who was about 9.5 years younger. And we grew up in Brooklyn. I learned a lot of things from my father. My father, as I mentioned, was in textiles. He took me to work once, and we went to breakfast with a client, and basically he schmoozed for about a half an hour, and afterwards he said, well, we want to do some business. So he spent about 5 minutes doing business, and that way they shook hands, and that was it. And this went on the whole day. I said, Dad, this is not work. He says, yeah, it's a lot of fun. The one thing he taught me when I remember that first time he took me around was shaking hands. And when we were shaking hands, he says, when you shake hands with someone, don't just shake hands. Put your hand all the way in. Get a good grasp of the person's hand, and when you're shaking hands, you don't want them to think you're a fish, shaking hands with a fish. Another important lesson I learned from my father was giving tzedakah. They would always have donations announced in shul, and my father would always give anonymously, and I still to this day always give anonymously. I guess it's the way of the Rambam and my father, but I guess it's a good way to give tzedakah. My mother was a rock, was always there for the kids, and I think one of the most telling stories she ever told all her kids, and I tell to my kids and grandkids, is when you choose a profession, when you choose what you want to do for the rest of your life, pick something you really love, something you enjoy. And for me, as your mother, even if it means being a garbage man, if that's what makes you happy, that'll make me happy. And I don't think many Jewish mothers would really be happy with their sons as garbage men, but she really believed it. She was an unbelievable woman. Now my kids know Grandma, and even some of the grandkids know Grandma, because she used to come to Israel and she wanted to spend quality time with the grandkids. But I'm sure my kids will tell the stories of Grandma taking all of her grandkids on cruises, one to the Caribbean, one to Bermuda, and she really invested not only in the stock market, which she did pretty well with my father, but also with the family, and our family is really well knit and close because of the investments both my parents made with their family. Now, growing up, family was a crucial and most important part of our life. Many times, certainly on holidays, we would get together. I remember Seder at my grandparents, the Rubens, and also during national holidays, Thanksgiving or whatever, we would spend time with our cousins, with our grandparents, and uncles and aunts. So family was certainly an important part of the Sprung family and tradition. Now, going to school, we lived in Brooklyn. As I mentioned, my father thought it was important that we went to day schools. My mother obviously agreed. Her family came from a religious family in Poland. And I ended up initially going to Yeshiva Rambam in Brooklyn, but when we moved to New Jersey, I went to Yavne Academy, which was in Patterson, and subsequently went to Yeshiva University High School in Manhattan, MTA, and I ended up spending 3 years at Yeshiva University, getting admitted to downstate after 3 years, and went on to become a physician. Studying at downstate, I ended up thereafter going to Kings County, which was the hospital affiliated with the State University of New York downstate, and trained in internal medicine, and after that, critical care, intensive care medicine. Rebecca, my wife, who has always given me good advice, thought I should become a dermatologist. I said I didn't want to become a doctor to pop pimples. I wanted to be a doctor to save lives. Now, Rebecca had trepidations about leaving the family, but she always, and she'll tell her story about Zionism and wanting to make Aliyah. I was a Zionist, but certainly not a fervent Zionist like Rebecca. And I said, well, if you're really serious about making Aliyah, we're going to be away from our family, and the first step will be to be away from our family. So this is our first step to Aliyah, to move to Miami, which we did. So I guess one of the next things I ought to speak about, and probably one of the most important things in my life, is how I met Rebecca and our courtship.
Hi there.
Whoa!
Here I am, here to tell a story. It's my sister Helen, who's older than me by almost 3 years, and me. We were the two children. And then when my brother came along 4 years later, Danny, we needed to move to a bigger house. And I have some of my first memories are going to this new development. It used to be a forest, and they were going to cut down trees, and we had to mark off with a white handkerchief the trees we wanted to save around our new house. And every Sunday we would go up the hill and check our house in 2 Locust Hollow Drive. I have 2 elementary school friends that are still friends with me today that I've taken along with me, Suri and Elliot. And from High Rock, there was no high school, so we went by car every day to Manhattan, to Central Manhattan. Central was the YU high school for girls, and that turned out to be very formidable years for me, where I've made some unbelievably lifelong friends, and of course along the way happened to have met my husband. And throughout this whole time, from when I'm 16, because when I was 16 I was Oliver in the Oliver play, that's when Charlie started his courtship with me. And I can honestly say that if one day he hadn't given up, we would not be married today. So I do agree with the first lesson that I've learned, is that you need to be persistent, and no doesn't mean no. And I'm the better person for it, because with the years, I have to say, if I had any doubts all those 6 years we were dating, 46 years later, I made the definite right choice. So that's the compliment you're getting.
So did I.
Okay. So my father was born in America, and he was quite an unusual man, very soft-spoken, loved to do tzedakah. My father's main motto was, if you give, you get, and he lived his life that way. Interestingly, his father, who was widowed at an early age, and he was one of the founders of the J. Levine Company from his father-in-law. He had 3 sons and 1 daughter, and all 3 sons were made to go into the business. Actually, my father was a graduate of City College, but even he was told by his father, we need you in the business, and he went into the business. Now, what happened was that my grandfather, Pop, my father's father, Yisrael Levine, was a Zionist, and in 1949, he decided to make Aliyah. He left his whole family, the business, and he moved to Rehov Malachi 13, where he later married a widower, Miriam, and lived in Yerushalayim in poverty, I would say. Went up to Har Zion every day, davening towards the Kotel, which he couldn't get to. He grew a big beard because he was a modern religious man when he moved to Israel. So I think my Zionist genes must have been in there. My father, being the American, always loved to come to Israel, and he spent several months here in 1949, right before his father made Aliyah, and we made a whole book for my father, because he kept a diary about all the things. And my father always loved Israel, and I think his real dream was to move to Israel. Now, as opposed to my father, my mother was a refugee. My mother grew up in Czechoslovakia as a young girl on a farm, lived in a very small town of Svalova, and my grandfather, Mayor Dov Birnbaum, was a chazan and a shoichet. There was no work in this little town, so as luck had it, they moved to Berlin, where he became a rabbi and a shochet, and he saw the rise of Hitler. And that ultimately saved our lives, and it's why we're here today. Because my grandfather, one of 6 brothers and sisters, he was the only one that left Svalova, and in Berlin, he saw the Hitler marching in front of his porch, and he started already writing letters to try to get invitations for his family to get out of Germany, and he succeeded after a lot of hard effort, and they went to America with some of his family. But we did spend a lot of my childhood talking about Israel because I had a grandfather there, and he used to come with his wife every summer. And my father, that was the other thing about my father, he was never on time. Remind me to go back to that, because that's one reason I married Charlie. And part of the reason really was my father was always late. And when I was studying in high school, we'd do carpools, and my father, never mind that he was late picking me up, but all my friends, oh my gosh, I used to cry because I was like so embarrassed. So when I started dating Charlie and he would say, I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock, my whole family would be sitting in the kitchen looking at the clock, and when the second hand struck 12, the doorbell would ring. And that was always the joke in my family.
I was usually early.
Right, because you stood in front of the door. You didn't want to come in earlier. But that was always the joke. But of course, the things that we do when we're younger, and sometimes Charlie hasn't changed. He's still always on time. But now I'm a little not so anxious to be so on time all the time. But I can't complain.
Now I drive her crazy being on time.
Right. In 1968, my parents sent me on a summer program to Israel. And that's when it happened. I came to Israel, and I felt like I was home. I can't describe it any other way or to anybody else except if you have it inside of you. You come here and you feel, oh, this is where I belong. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. When I spend my sophomore year here, I said, I'll meet an Israeli, I'll get married, and that way I know I'll make Aliyah, because I knew it was going to be very hard for me to make Aliyah.
Rebecca was in a play, I think it was Oliver, and Ruthie took me along as her date to see the play, and I think she was an undertaker.
That's exactly right.
In the play, but
It wasn't such a big part.
it wasn't a big part, but I was struck by her beauty, her excellent acting performance, although it wasn't that large. And I was still going out with Ruthie, but after a few months it sort of fizzled out. We had decided not to go out. And several months later I remembered about the play, remembered about Rebecca, and I called her up to go out. But Rebecca really wasn't interested because she was Ruthie's friend and I was Ruthie's boyfriend, although it was several months thereafter. But
It was very awkward. I knew all about him. How can you go out with someone you know all about? So after 2 dates, I gave you a good excuse, and we stopped dating.
so one of, I guess, my characteristics is being persistent.
Excuse me, very persistent, not just persistent.
And as I said, no doesn't necessarily mean no, so I saw certain things in Rebecca that I thought I should pursue, and I continued to pursue till she agreed to start going out. And we actually went out and went out
And broke up,
and went out.
and broke up,
And
over a period of
5 years. I was initially only 18. I was ready to be serious. She was only 16, and I understand she needed more time.
I will never marry Charlie Sprung. You know how many times I said that?
She said it to her mother. Her mother didn't believe it because I
Mm.
kept giving her presents
And to my friends.
and to her friends. So Rebecca's motto now for her kids and grandkids.
Never say never. And it's a good thing I didn't listen to my never.
And then she came back and things were getting more serious, and she had another friend who also wanted to get serious with her, and she had to make a decision to either marry me or this other boyfriend.
Person. Yeah.
And thank God Rebecca's sister is very, very wise, and
Counseled me.
Helen told her you should marry Charlie, which she did, and I guess it's been happy ever after. At least from my side.
Good decision, good decision. And we got married on the condition that.
And we got married on the condition that we make Aliyah, and as I said, I was willing to make Aliyah, but I was willing to pretty much do anything to marry Rebecca, and it worked out well. So we were living in Miami. Actually, before we moved to Miami, in New York during my training, Ellie and Nina were born. But when we moved to Miami, then Ari and Shanak came, and we had a wonderful family. It was great living in Miami. The kids were outdoors 12 months a year. The heat didn't bother them as much as it bothered us, but it was a great life. And Israel was a special place for me. It was like coming home. But more importantly, being a physician and being able to take care of your own people was something very, very special. We had difficult times during our times in Israel. The first year we came was the Gulf War. The kids were home. We had to go in the Cheder Atum, put on the gas masks. I found out that I was in charge of all the intensive care units for Hadassah, so while sometimes the kids were in the Cheder Atum with Rebecca, I would have to go in the middle of the night during the sirens to the hospital, spend time there. And then the Intifada, which was a very, very difficult time for everyone. I was taking care of the patients in the intensive care unit. That was probably a lot easier because I was very, very busy, not worrying about anything but taking care of my patients, whereas other people had to worry about what was really happening and about their loved ones. But Israel was a great time. I've enjoyed practicing medicine, and I've been privileged enough to be successful enough with my taking care of patients, my research, my publications, to have been recognized not only by Hadassah and my institution, but also my colleagues around the world. The European Society of Intensive Care Medicine, where I was very active on the executive committee, became the treasurer. But I was given several honors and awards by the European Society in Israel also, but maybe Rebecca ought to speak a little bit more about those.
Pleasure. Okay, so during our time in Miami, which by the way, we made up with our families that we would do Aliyah L'Regel on Sukkot and Pesach to be with Charlie's family and my family, the cousins. My sister Helen and Danny and their kids, and Barry and Helene and their kids. We split our time in New York. We always flew up to New York and spend the holidays. In fact, sometimes they came down to Miami towards the end for Pesach. But we had a lot of good family time. And then, lo and behold, again, I think we had Hashgacha Pratit, and unfortunately, a young doctor in Hadassah passed away. He was the head of anesthesia, and the head of the ICU wanted to become the head of anesthesia. And because they had known Charlie for a Mar sabbatical, they offered him the job to come to Hadassah, run the ICU, and this was the best job we ever could have hoped for. It was the only job at the time that Charlie would have come back for, and it made our decision to make Aliyah pretty easy. Of course, then we went and we interviewed, I would say, our kids to see what their thoughts were. Now, Ellie was going to enter 9th grade, and he said, "What, are you kidding? You're going to ruin my life. There's no way. I'm not going." All his friends were starting this new high school, and who could blame him? I mean, it was that. Nina, on the other hand, being the free spirit she was, loved Israel. She says, "Oh, when can we go?" She was ready. Ari, in 1st grade, he was in Israel, not understanding Hebrew, but finally learning it on the soccer field. And so he learned a little Hebrew. He came back to America for 2nd and 3rd grade, and he didn't know English. So he said, "Ma, I don't care where you live, but can you please make up your mind?" And Shana was only 3, so she didn't get asked. But my kids had certainly a big challenge. Coming here in 9th grade was not an easy thing, and I remember going for counseling. I'm a very big believer, by the way, in counseling and professionals helping you when you have tough decisions. I have to mention our parents' reactions to our making Aliyah, which is a big part of it, because Charlie's family his parents were retiring to Miami. We were going to be in Miami. All of a sudden, I'm taking their son, the doctor, and their grandchildren to Israel. Oh my God. And these are Americans. I can't say they didn't love Israel, but they weren't Zionists.
They were Zionists, they were supporting, right, but not to live there.
Right. Also, you never mentioned your father was a JDL. He was quite a
And
Yeah.
he was running
Right,
guns in
right.
48 for Israel.
Right. So they loved Israel, but it's not a place you live. It's just a place you visit.
And sent money.
So they sat us down and they said, explain to us. And I explained to them why I was doing it. And one interesting, if you want to know why, besides my emotional attachment to Israel, of me feeling good here, I liked family lifestyle here. I liked that when your kids are far, they're not a plane ride away, that you can drive there. I liked everything about family life here. I liked the relationship between grandparents and children, which were much more natural, not staged. And there were many reasons that I did it.
Less materialism.
And of
too.
course, less materialism. And as you can see by the way we lead our lives, money was never a factor in how we lived our lives. And I have to say, Charlie's parents listened, and they were incredible. They said, okay, we accept that. Your reasons are valid, and they didn't argue. They didn't make us feel guilty. They helped us buy our house. And I will be forever grateful for them, because other people who made Aliyah had horror stories. And we promised them at the time, don't worry, when you need us, we will be there. And I am so pleased to say that we did that throughout all the years that we lived here. Charlie was by his father's bedside more than his brother and sister. Charlie even went to give a hesped at his grandmother's funeral. We were there.
And I was there for every one of my mother's operations.
Every operation, we gave them the kavod that we could have given them. So I'm very pleased about that. On the other hand, no one could have been happier than my father when we made Aliyah. Because although my mother was very not anxious to move to Israel, he figured, if I have a kid living there, I have a better chance of getting there. And as it turned out, he got his dream come true. Here, the kids do, I wish they didn't have to, but they do national service or the army. And each one of my kids had amazing army and Sharut Leumi that actually helped shape them into the people they are today. I must say my kids are all very accomplished today, and I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. And when I'm taking stock of my life, I can look back and say, I think I did okay.
You did great.
Yeah. Through him we met such fascinating people. I said they had such fascinating lives, and at the time I thought my life is so boring, but now taking stock of my life, I didn't have a boring life. I certainly didn't take the easy way out, and I can say that I have really no regrets. I think I was very lucky. Now my other thing I have to say is my guilt with bringing my children here was one thing, but I was also putting a stop on Charlie's career, and that was a very big concern. Charlie had 3 secretaries in Miami. He came here and he was getting 0 secretaries. He went to Ben Yehuda and he took a typing course, a 10-finger typing course, which turned out to be the best thing he ever did. It was before the age of computers.
No, the best thing was marrying you, dear.
Okay. Out there, he made wonderful contacts, and he became part of the European Society and was able to do amazing things with his research. He was awarded prizes from the European Society. I went to Berlin. It was a very, very moving trip for me. And watching Charlie stand up there with his kippah getting this big award was quite a moment for me. And he was awarded the Nefesh B'Nefesh Award for an Oleh who made a very big contribution to Israel. And I can honestly say that coming to a small country, you can make a big difference. As opposed to in America, there are a lot of Charlie Sprungs. In Israel, Charlie made his mark.
Charlie Sprung. You are a trailblazer in Israel's field of medicine. You have transformed the care that critically ill patients receive. You have garnered the respect and admiration of your colleagues and peers from around the world. And you have accomplished all of this with the highest degree of sensitivity, humility, menschlichkeit, and unshakable commitment to ethics. Dr. Sprung, Mazal Tov.
But I think more than anything, what Charlie did in Israel was teaching doctors how to talk to families, making time, because there's a difference of culture, and that's something Americans who move here can help to change some of that culture. Charlie took the families every day and sat with them, and I told him, Charlie, bring the young doctors in with you so they can see how you speak to your patients. You know, very occasionally Charlie would make a shiva call to his patients. Sometimes I went along because I had a connection, and he would walk in, and at the shiva, which means there wasn't a happy ending. Most of Charlie's patients survived, by the way. But the ones
Thank you for that comment.
Yeah, but the ones who died, they had Charlie to lelavoot otam, to lead them. And sometimes the way you help people die is worth more than how you help them live. Now wait, there's a very big part here. During the course of our living in Israel, my nieces and nephews all spend the year here. So that was wonderful because instead of leaving our family, we really got to know our family, including my friends whose kids came for the year. We became part of an Israeli group as well. So we both speak Hebrew fluently. And I think that our Aliyah has been very successful. We read the Hebrew papers every day. And we have Israeli friends. We do not just stay with Americans. I was going to say my nieces and nephews that spend the year with us got to see what it's like to live here, not just to study here. Because so many of the kids that come for the year are very detached from Israel, unfortunately. And I think one of the main advantages was
it was
that
Rebecca's Zionistic chicken soup Friday night.
Charlie. So believe it or not, my sister's 4 children individually each made Aliyah. And therefore, my sister and brother-in-law made Aliyah. And that was a dream I never had. My dream was to live in Israel. My sister had different dreams. She wanted her big house. She wanted to retire to Miami. Sorry, Helen. They're now in Ra'anana, happy as can be, thanking me for bringing them here. So we've actually built our extended, we've managed to get my extended family here, first cousins. And it's a dream. It's better than my dream.
Gee, you have this great job. I mean, you take care of patients, but you even get to travel anywhere I want to go. I just pick up the phone or write an email and I get invited to talk. And thank God, during the years, Rebecca and I have really traveled around the world. We took sabbaticals not only in Israel, but we were in Australia, New Zealand. A great career, taking care of patients, doing research, teaching, but also traveling the world, lecturing, being a visiting professor, and seeing the world with your family.
Today's gonna be a good day, no matter what comes down my way. Today's gonna be a good day, no matter what comes down my way. 'Cause I've got something burning inside, and I've already made up my mind. Today's gonna be a good day, no matter what comes down my way. Today's gonna be a good day, no matter what comes down my way. 'Cause I've got something burning inside, and I've already made up my mind. Today's the day I'll be okay. Sunshine clears the clouds away. Today's the day.
But I also need to mention another big factor when I was growing up. My mother, being the immigrant and losing a lot of her family in the Holocaust, she spent most of her life searching for family, taking care of family, which included her mother. And for 7 years, my bubby came and lived in my house. My brother gave up his bedroom. My mother gave up any career she would have had, and she literally took care of her mother until the day she was nifter with my father's support. And that was a lesson for me. My mother taught me the value of family, and family comes first, and what we do to family. And it was very much ingrained in me and my brother and sister, as is evident by the close relationships that we keep today. And that was one thing Charlie and I really had in common. And that's a very big deal when you're looking for a spouse, is to see the families they come from, because these are things that in your life, it's going to matter a lot. And we both agreed on that. We agree on a lot of things. We don't agree on other things, but
That's
I would
correct.
say on our major elements, we really do think alike on that. So,
But I have to stop you
okay.
because you learned the lesson well from your parents. Because no one could been Mekayim the mitzvah of Kibbutz Avayim like you did for your parents. Rebecca's mom had Alzheimer's. I said, "What do you talk?" Because I can't talk.
So my mom, at my age, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and that's one of the reasons, actually, that we brought them to Israel. It was a very slow progression. At first, for a whole year, my father didn't even tell us that she had Alzheimer's. And how did he know? Because she got lost coming home from the beauty parlor that she went to for 20 years. It was very hard for my dad to take care of my mother in Muncie alone. My sister was living in Englewood. I was living in Yerushalayim. And we went to my father and we said to him, Dad, you cannot stay in Muncie with Mommy. You either move to Englewood near Helen or Yerushalayim near me. It was a no-brainer. My father's dream came true. And we brought them to Yerushalayim. And they lived in the Pinsker building. And I had wonderful care here for my mother. We were able to afford to have wonderful live-in help. And they had a very, very comforting and mechubad life here till the end of their lives. And it wasn't easy having that burden of my parents, but on the other hand, I saw it as a zchut because my children grew up seeing what kibbut ava'im was. My father started to decline. He had just mini strokes. He still was my father. He didn't go through the trauma of what that we went through with my mother, but we hired somebody, Epi, who became like my brother, I would say. But my father was part of our family. Every Friday night he came and he was with us. Charlie took him to shul, the highlight of his day. And we were very involved in taking care of our parents for so many years. Like Charlie's decisive, I am very indecisive. So that's
Isn't
why
that another
that's
reason you
another
married?
reason. That's the other reason I married him. I wanted someone who made the decisions. And interestingly, because my household, my mother made all the decisions, and I didn't want that. So I wanted someone strong, and he fit the bill. You see, you fit the bill for my husband, just not as my boyfriend. So
Thank God.
yeah. So I decided also that I was going to allow Charlie to choose his own path, and that's been my philosophy in our marriage. I never said to Charlie, don't go to this conference, don't do this, stop working, did I?
No. To tell you the truth, any of my accomplishments, she's very modest also. I wouldn't have been able to do
I agree with
anything
that.
I've accomplished without her support for taking care of the kids, for supporting me and helping me every way. So,
But anyway, so
she
that
has
was-
been an Ezer Kenegdo, hands down, and everyone should be so lucky.
Okay, I'll take that. When Nina was 8 years old, she developed suddenly type 1 diabetes. And it was quite a shock. I knew nothing about the disease. And we were hospitalized. I had to learn how to give shots. We had to start learning about it. And the only little problem was I was 9 months pregnant at the time. So I was in the hospital with her, 9 months pregnant. And we managed to get through the trauma of it. And a week later, Shauna was born. And I was dealing with this new added challenge, okay? And at the same time, of course, my housekeeper quit, and Helene flew down from New York to help me with a new baby, with the new disease, and we somehow got through it. And I had made, a decision when Nina was diagnosed that I was not going to treat this as something scary to her. I didn't want her to make her feel handicapped, even though it was a challenge. I didn't feel it was something that should be harped on, but not kept secret either. So I think I made them pretty comfortable with they're not going to get away with anything, and they have to do what they have to do,
And they can live a normal
and
life.
that they could live a normal life. And I remember feeling very different working with a kid with diabetes than I was before. My life really did change. And interestingly, I made an adjustment in my life. Instead of always thinking, Charlie's very much a planner in the future, and that's part of his thing. And I, at that point in my life, decided to stay in the here and now. And it's very interesting because it was a very lucky decision of mine because, first of all, living in Israel, that's much more how it is. It's more today, not tomorrow. I find that's what the appeal to me to life in Israel is, to appreciate what we have today. We don't know what tomorrow. Look at my mom, for me to sit here worrying about the Alzheimer's every minute. Let me enjoy today. Let me make the most of today. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, we were struck again, very, very surprisingly. And we made an early diagnosis that Ellie at age 12 also developed diabetes. He didn't even have to be hospitalized because we were experts in diabetes. And I must admit, I made a mistake. I made him go to school the same day. We gave him a shot of insulin, and because I wanted to keep everything normal, I made him go to school. And Ellie, I do owe you a vacation day. We had them tested, and then we unfortunately found out that Shauna, our youngest, did develop antibodies, and we put her on an experimental program, and 6 years later she was also diagnosed with diabetes. But as you will soon see, the diabetes has really not stood in her way at all. She's an unbelievable athlete, an accomplished person. Nina's the mother of 4 kids. Ellie's the father of 4 kids, did the Army, went to law school. And I think that I accomplished my goal of having my kids live a normal life. Of course, now I have to mention Ari, because you don't want to say Ari was the lucky one, because it wasn't easy being the only one without and taking away your sugar cereals and your, Hashem gives us what we have to handle, and we do the best we can with it. And I tried my best.
And we have a very sweet family.
We do have a very sweet family.
היום יהיה יום טוב עם כל מה שיבוא היום יהיה יום טוב עם כל מה שיבוא כי אש בוערת בקרבי והשמחה בתוך ליבי היום יהיה יום טוב עם כל מה שיבוא היום יהיה יום טוב עם כל מה שיבוא כי אש בוערת בקרבי והשמחה בתוך ליבי זה היום, זה המקום שמיים נפתחו פתאום זה היום עמוק לנשום עזוב מחר כבר יש היום זה היום, זה המקום שמיים נפתחו פתאום זה היום אני אזרום בואו ונשאיר את הפזמון
One, ready, set, countdown.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
12.
11.
Why don't you tell them what you're known for in the family? Thinking of
Best memory.
That was a funny one. Ellie, that was funny.
Oh, I'm a very funny guy.
Well, what are you known for?
I'm loud and annoying.
What are you known for, Ari?
Quiet.
Non-diabetic.
Shana, what are you known for?
I don't know, baby.
She's the athlete. She's the athlete of the family.
All right.
Well, now she's
Well,
loud.
now, yes.
Sorry.
Ari used to be the athlete.
Once upon a time.
When I was diagnosed with diabetes, obviously I wasn't really happy about it. But I remember having 2 people in my life that kind of showed me an example of how you can have a life with diabetes, you can have a family with diabetes, you can do whatever you want with diabetes. So I think that's kind of what made me believe that I can do whatever I wanted. From sports to academics, anything I want to do. And diabetes to me was never an obstacle.
I also remember that when Abba had finals from law school, he was locked in the study. And for me it was a big thing because the seriousness that both my father and mother take both studies and things like that, I think was definitely an example for things that if you think something important, then it is important, and you have to give it your all to do that. I think that's definitely something that both of our parents instilled in us, and by practice showed that. I think my mother, as Nina said, did a lot and always had time for us. My mother always had time for everything, and still does. She will always give you her advice, whether you want to hear it or not. And she sees that as her mission, as her job, to share her advice with you, because she wants what's best for you, and that's how she can give you her thoughts and what she thinks is right. You can agree to accept it. You do have to listen to it. Usually she's right. You can listen or not, but that's your choice.
So growing up in high school, I had very good friends of mine, and they tended to get into trouble a lot. But they were my childhood friends, and we hung out a lot, even though everyone in the block knew that these kids got in trouble. But my parents never told me stop hanging out, with these friends. And I think the value that they installed in me by doing that is trusting me and trusting their children that they will make the right decision. And that's something that I try to do with my kids today, is to trust them, to trust that they'll make the right decisions. The second thing that I remember growing up is my mother always talking about her father, Arzadi, getting into a fight with his siblings, and how it hurt him a lot and it hurt the family a lot, that the family was fighting a lot. And I remember her telling us stories about it, and the importance for her, and her message to us was always that family has to get along. Family has to talk about their issues and get along, and family is the most important thing.
I can continue on, first of all, the trusting with your kids, where I remember growing up never having a curfew. I had friends that would say, oh yeah, I gotta be home by 10, I gotta be home by 12, and I was like, I just gotta be home at some point. Like,
We had curfews,
in
by the
the
way.
morning I'll wake up.
Yeah, we all
I
had
had
curfews.
curfews.
Yeah, we all
I had very.
I did not.
You didn't go out.
I did not.
I didn't,
Ellie, you
I
go out.
didn't need it.
Ellie was home all day.
Okay, so let's put it this way.
If I would have gone out, I would have had a curfew.
I was the only one
They
with
gave the
curfew.
curfews. I remember, in continuation to what they were saying about my dad, where he was always on a schedule. Now, me and my dad are probably, out of all four of us, everyone always says all I'm missing is a mustache, and I'll be Charles Sprung. So I think we're very similar, where there's...
She's better looking.
There's a schedule for everything, and I think I try and have a schedule. It doesn't always work out. I think I've learned how to deal with the schedule not always working out. But I definitely learned how to be very committed to what you want to do, meaning he has an amazing work ethic, which I think I've acquired as well. With my mom, besides not having a curfew, I remember that no matter how late it was, usually it was pretty late, like 10 o'clock, she'd go out dancing. And that was kind of something she loved doing, and no matter how busy she was throughout the day or what she had going on, she had to kind of go do her thing. I think I probably do that with exercise now, where if I don't get exercise, something's missing. A big part was where my mom would come home at like 1 a.m. And I was home with my friends, and they're like, oh, like, who's coming in the house now? And they're like, oh, my mom, yeah, she was out dancing. My mom would come back later than us.
And I remember how my father was very much involved in caring for my grandfather, and saying what to do and how to do, and everything like that. And I remember distinct memories of saying, maybe I'm picking the wrong path by going to law school. How can, look at everything that my father is giving, and all this knowledge, and everything how he's giving to his entire family, and as everyone said, everything that we have because my father is who he is. How could I not do that for my family?
Yeah, but one thing first, with the advice, and that Ellie mentioned, mommy always giving advice. I think that one thing, when you get older, you gain perspective about your family. And so when I was younger, I was the girl stuck between the boys. I actually didn't like wrestling or Rocky or football games or all that. And all I wanted was a sister. And my mother gave me my sister. The only issue was that she preferred football and wrestling and Ari to dresses and anything else. But years later, I could say that today I actually had my sister that I always wanted. And the advice and the parenting that we got, I think, made the family into what it is. And everyone hates their family, but as you get perspective and you meet other families, you realize what a great childhood and what a great family you have, and how they really helped you live life and be who you are today. And the greatest way I can appreciate my parents and give a gift to my kids is really, I'm not the same, but I do try to model my parenting a lot. through my mother's ways. A little bit of you in later years. But
My father traveled a lot to speak throughout the world, and I think he tried many times to take us with him. Later on in life, my father took both myself and my brother to Paris. And we both, I remember Ari and I, we went to Euro Disney together. He did want us to go to the Louvre, and Ari wanted nothing to do with the Louvre. But Ari had to go to the bathroom, and my father said, "Well, there's a bathroom in the Louvre." So that's how we got into the Louvre. I remember some of the museums and some of the stuff, but just spending quality time, that was a lot of fun.
I remember going to Disney World with you. That was fun.
oh, we went to Barcelona.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was fun.
No, but it was cool because we went to like we were able to have dinner in a museum, and
Oh, I do remember that trip. On Shabbos.
The Nazis were there.
On Shabbos afternoon. Right, we were staying in the old city in Prague, and Shabbos afternoon we went to take a walk, and then all of a sudden we saw these cops and big commotion, and all of a sudden we saw neo-Nazis coming towards us.
Marrying into the Sprung family is an experience.
A good one.
A great experience. I made Aliyah as soon as we got married, and I came to Israel, and I didn't have any family here except for my new family. And one of the things that really helped me was the fact that during Sheva Brachot, after we got married, my father-in-law pulled me aside, and he said to me, "Okay, now you could call us mom and dad. We're not replacing your own mom and dad, that was understood, but we're your family now, and that's what we consider you a daughter, and we want you to call us mom and dad." And that I really appreciated that, because I felt like I was part of the family instantly, and I felt that ever since. Another thing with my mother-in-law is this is her new thing. She always tells people, "Oh, Carla's such a great daughter-in-law because I could just drop by whenever I want and I don't have to give her any notice." But I totally have her tricked, because it's us who gets really happy when she stops by, and we benefit from her just stopping by. And I really feel like my in-laws are just like my parents, and I'm really lucky to have them.
Okay, so I remember before I came into the Sprung family, when I was going out with Nina, and I used to come to their house for Shabbos.
Even before we went out.
And I used to look at Nina's really beautiful mother and say, if this girl ages anything like that, she's a keeper. And I remember there was one thing that Nina's mother found out that really was very significant for them. They had, I don't know if I told them or someone told them about that. My grandmother, Rosalind Siegel, when she was in her last few months and she was no longer able to live by herself, she moved into my parents' house. And rather than send her to a hospice or a nursing home or anything like that, they said, of course you're going to come. So we cleared out a bedroom and had her live in our house. And when my mother-in-law heard that, she said, "Oh wow, that's a good family. That's the type of people. Those are our kind of people." And I saw that the same type of care and the same with your parents, and that respect for your parents and your elders was something that we do our best to teach our children as well. And it's such a core value that it's one of the earliest things that really struck me about the Sprung family. What it is that they've prioritized that having the family together, especially as the family grows, is something that's really important, and it's worth spending all that money. And that's, sometimes we don't always see each other, we don't spend as much time with each other, and that's the time to put us all together and say, you guys are family. Go do something fun together, get along. Go fight and make up. Your family. And this is something that I think that my children are taking from them as well, and I think from the number of people who mentioned this in some way or another, it's obvious that this is very important. So, I think these are the things that I really wanted to bring out about the Sprung family, and it's a shared value. My mother-in-law and father-in-law, and there's one more thing, and that is, she'll just talk about Israel.
No, you don't have to.
I'm already here in Israel. Israel's already, it's in the DNA. There's no one needs to talk about Israel. And now it's so obvious. The same for Jewish values are so in the DNA. There's no need to talk about it. But one thing that really strikes me is the level of integrity. My in-laws, I can honestly say, are really good, straight people.
Ari and I met in LA when we were both
away from our families, and we didn't know what each other's families looked like, what they were like. But then your mother decided to come to LA. I think it was not only to visit you, but it was to meet, who is this girl that Ari's dating in LA? What's going on here? Let me make sure he's not getting stuck anywhere. I remember when meeting your mother for the first time, I actually remember what I wore, because I put a lot of thought into, oh my God, is she gonna like me? And our first meeting was like an instantaneous click. It was like I was embraced into family. And to the extent where like we kind of knew how each other was thinking, like right off the bat. She told me that she has a passion for Israeli dancing, and within 10 minutes I found the best Israeli dancing for her in LA. And I think she knew that we were made out of the same material. We just got each other, we got things done. And I think maybe she realized why we were a good fit, because she saw that I was a problem solver, and we just kind of really matched each other. Meeting your family was a little bit overwhelming, but it was so incredible because they were so embracing. People would ask your brother, I heard your brother, I heard Ari has a girlfriend, and say, yeah, he has a girlfriend. They're practically living at my parents' house. And who else could you say that about? Like, what an amazing family that just took me in right away and made me feel at home. I think one thing that we're very lucky about is that we had an opportunity to actually live with your parents at many points of our life. We're kind of like...
Not with, next to.
No, with I can't think of any other set of in-laws or my friends or people I know that their daughter-in-law would feel so comfortable to just go in and move in with. And I'm so thankful to you, Mom and Dad, for opening up your home to us at any point of the way and just making us feel like that is our home. And we've been so lucky to live so close to you.
Again, this part of this video is taking stock, looking back and summing up things. And you've also talked about the things that I do, but I think the thing I actually do best is rationalize. And part of that idea of rationalizing is thinking positive. And there's two ways to go out through life. And from a very young age, I think it must be in our genes, because my sister and brother are very similar, we're positive thinkers. You know, everyone was in camp. There's little things you can complain about in camp. And all my friends used to write all their complaints to their parents, and I wrote what was good about camp. So my lesson is think positive. All right, the other thing was that I was very lucky, as the kids mentioned about dancing, find something you love to do and then do it. Do it for yourself, because so much of your life you're busy doing work, you're doing for humanity, you're doing for your family, but don't forget yourself. And even though I had a busy life, making that niche for my dancing time was something that I always looked forward to when it was really hard for me to get through the day. I knew I would go out and dance at night when I had a lot of stress. I danced it and I felt ready to face tomorrow. Be loyal. I have friends from the age of 8. Stay with them, work hard, keeping friends and family, which I think I've done well, and I'm so lucky to be surrounded by so many friends and so many family that's like friends. And don't take the easy way out. Ari, remember what you told me? Ari asked me, Ma, why did you move to Israel? It was so much easier for you, your life. I had a live-in help. I had this huge house, big backyard, moved to a smaller house. Not so much help. I said, not always easy is better. And I do believe that, even though I've had not a hard life, I think a good life, but it wasn't always the easiest. The other thing that I've learned, and this I only learned later in life, so this you have to listen to carefully, is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that was one of my weaknesses, is that I thought I could do everything. I think my mother always pushed me, and sometimes you think you can do everything. Sometimes you just can't. And sometimes it's better to go out and ask for help, whether it's from a loved one, whether it's from a professional, or maybe your friends should tell you should ask for help. But if you're struggling, go ask for help. You can't do everything by yourself. And of course, enjoy what you do in life. It's more important than your titles. Find something that you love to do. I mean, I have so many freaking degrees that it's ridiculous. And what am I doing? I'm basically officially a secretary. I'm not really a secretary, but I love what I do. I feel good about it. I feel like I'm contributing. I work with nice people. I enjoy going and feeling productive, and that's more important than anything. Of course, money wouldn't hurt, but it's never been our end all. Okay, everything in moderation. I believe in that in everything, whether it's food, exercise, life, enjoyment, and smile. And that I got from my father. If you smile, then the whole world smiles with you. And for my mother, my mother would say, get out of your house. Go out of your house, you'll learn something. I learned a lot from my parents, and I see in you that you've learned from me. Some of you in your parenting skills, some of you in your life skills, and you know what? I did a really good job.
You sure did.
We agree.
Okay.
And it seems like you guys are very similar, you and Nina.
And I think Mom wanted to give messages, and so do I. Not for you guys, I think, because as Mom said, and from what you said, I think we did a pretty good job. And I think a lot of the values that we had, we've instilled in you. I see it in some of the grandkids too, but this video is for the future, and I don't know how many other generations there'll be who may not know who we are. Hopefully they'll still know who you are, because you'll be their grandparents, but it's for the future also. So there are a few things I think that are important to both of us, I think important to the four of you, and that's come up throughout the last few hours of us talking. And the first is the importance of family. I think if there is anything that's been important for the Sprung and Levine family, and I think you've seen it, I guess we've instilled it in you, and it comes from seeing our parents, our grandparents, and you the same, is people talk about blood being thicker than water, but there is something special about family, being there for each other during the good times, during the bad times, and knowing there's always someone there who you can turn to and will help with you. And I can just say there's nothing more rewarding than seeing this past Pesach, seeing the grandkids just playing with each other, with the Berman kids also. And it's just something you should continue, and it does continue, and I'm sure it will continue for a long time. The other thing is to think about the past, the chain, the future, the importance of who you are, why you are the way you are, your Jewish roots, your Torah background, to honor and respect and keep those Torah-based values for you, for your family members, and keep the chain really going from Moshe Rabbeinu down to our family and the continuation of the chain. It's important to think about helping the world, making the place a better place, the world a better place to live. And it's important, I think, in our own way, your mom and I have done that. I think in your own way, our children are doing it, and hopefully our grandchildren and future generations will continue doing it, each in their own way. I think we've done it in our way, and I think our parents have done it also, but each of you have a different personality, different skills, and our grandkids and future generations will have their skills, and each in their own way, whatever they can do to do something for Tikkun Olam, to make things better. Now, one of the advantages all of you have, besides having the gene for the diabetes, are other good genes in terms of who you are, the work ethic, what you can be, and certainly you've doing your thing and doing it well. But for the grandkids and the future generations, those genes are pretty good. And if you work hard, you should have the highest dreams that you want to fulfill. And I think anyone who's in this family, I think most anyone anywhere, but certainly with the gene pool we have, also from the in-laws, I think everyone and all the grandkids should always dream high, dream big, and anything you want to become, you certainly can become. And don't think twice about it. And remember, as we've heard consistently, no doesn't necessarily mean no, and you can really do anything.
Persistence.
And persistence, yes. be serious. I think as a physician, I'm very serious. I live with life and death many times, but also don't take yourself too seriously. Be aware of life and being serious. There's a time for that, but having fun and making the most out of enjoying whatever you do. And as Grandma really had said, you should find something that makes you happy. And for the grandkids, it's not all about money. It's having a job that makes you happy. And I love what I do, and as I've said many times, I really haven't worked a day in my life because I just love what I'm doing, and hopefully everyone will be able to do the same thing. And finally, probably the most important thing for our future generations is how to pick out a spouse, which is not so easy. I think I've been the most lucky in terms of picking your mom.
It wasn't luck.
It's persistent.
And Hashem's help for sure. But I think there are certain things you can look for, and this is for the future generations, because I think our kids have done very well, and I'm certainly Shana will also do well. I think it's important when you're looking at someone, you have to look at the family values, and I think you've heard about our family, the Levines and the Sprungs, having similar values, things that are important for them in terms of Torah, in terms of materialism, or not being so materialistic, and some of certainly the other family members who've married in. I mean, a lot of people have the same values. So I think in looking for people, look at your potential spouse's parents. They may be very much like them. They may not be, but think about that. But mainly the values you should think. You'll have enough challenges in life to make things difficult, but looking at the various values can make the bumps in the road that go on through life a lot easier to handle when you're coming really from the same place. But if I think of all the things I thought of looking at my girlfriend, was now my wife, 46 years. There are a lot of things I thought of then that were important, and I think they were important, but it's
You
difficult.
have no idea.
You really don't. So you gotta look for those values.
That's where the mazel comes in.
That's where and take the plunge. But the beauty for me has been the fact that Vayikach
Et Rivka, and then comes Vayikach.
So the love really, for our relationship, I thought came before, but it really has come afterwards. Thank you very much for saying yes.
Okay, well, that was dramatic.
Who's her favorite kid?
Well, Grandma's was Shelby.
It's Ari. It's of course it's Ari. I mean, everybody here knows that. It's definitely Ari. I mean, it's anyone who's the most fine. Who's most like me?
No, but I don't.
Hold on. I want to get this for the record.
I'm very happy that Ari thinks that he's the favorite.
No, your mother doesn't. Your mother just
the
said.
most like.
That's as much as confirmed.
And we know who the
Are you
most like
filming?
me is.
Are you filming or not?
Shana. Yes, we all know that.
Shana, yes,
And she's the most like grandma. Also.
But I have no favorites.
No, just one who's very much
just one
like
that's
you.
a little dearest.
I think that's like so obvious.
I
have a favorite.
Who's your favorite?
Everyone.
Is it? I thought it was me.
Corny as usual.
But I don't think anyone has a problem that Ari's your favorite.
We love you.